Sadi Aleph on the base, because I had to stop early with the first daf. It was only half an hour, and I just want to keep on pace, so I'll talk a little bit slower in this daf.
You can do this one a half an hour too.
I don't think so. Well, I'll try. Okay. You ready?
Yep.
Recording? Okay, we are on the Gemara and Sadi Amud Beis on the bottom. Welcome to all the guests. We spoke the other day about Tadir being Tadir V'Shena Tadir Kodem, Mekudash V'Ena Mekudash is Kodem. Now what do you do when you have Tadir versus Mekudash? One is more Tadir and one is more Mekudash. Rashi says Kagon Dam Olas Tamid, the Dam Chatas. So you have the Korban Tamid and the Dam of a Chatas. So on one hand the Tamid, which comes every day, is Tadir. And on the other hand, the Chatas, which is more holy, is Mekudash. So which one now comes first if you have to shecht or you have to apply the blood of both of them? And he gives a few other examples as well. Says the Gemara, Tadir Kodem Mishum de Tadir, or Dilma Mekudash Kodem de Kaddish. Those are the two possibilities. Tashma. The Gemara is going to give a few proofs and it's going to reject each proof the same way. So let's understand the rejection. Tmidin Kodmin Lemusafin. If you have a Korban Tamid, it comes before a Korban Musaf every day. We daven Shachris this morning before we daven Musaf. Says the Gemara, Ve'af agav de Musaf in Kaddish. Seemingly the Korban Musaf of, what are we talking about? Well, seemingly we're talking about Shabbos. One can say Rosh Chodesh, but seemingly in this one we're talking about Shabbos. Even though Rashi says Shabbos, even though the Korban Musaf is more Kadosh than the Korban Tamid, so therefore you would think you should daven Musaf before you should daven Shacharis. You should bring the Musaf before you should bring the Korban Tamid. Says Gemara, an interesting and important idea. Atu Shabbos l'musafin ahani l'tmidin lo ahani. Think about it for a second. What are we assuming? We're assuming that you have Tadir versus Mekudash. You have the Korban Tamid versus the Musaf, which is Mekudash. What do you really have in essence? If it's really Shabbos, so then the Tamid of Shabbos is not like the Tamid during the week. Today when we daven Shachris, so we just think, okay, we daven the regular Shachris and we added Yalav Yov. And there's a lot of practical nafkaminas, halacha l'maiseh. Part of the reason that an Avel doesn't daven, right? You see like on certain holidays, like Yom Ha'atzmaut, some of the later holidays like that. So the Avel will daven and then he just won't daven Musaf. He just won't daven Hallel. On Rosh Chodesh, an Avel doesn't even daven Shachris. Why not? Why can't he daven Shachris? Because we say Yalav Yov. Why can't he daven Shachris and then somebody else will daven Hallel? So one of the possible reasons is because the Shacharis of Rosh Chodesh itself is not like a regular weekday Shacharis. There's something more chashuv, more kaddish about that Shacharis. So if you're looking at it versus Tadir versus Mekudash, it's not. It's not that the Tamid on Shabbos is Tadir and the Musaf is Mekudash. The Shabbos Tamid is also more Mekudash than the weekday Tamid. So now you have Mekudash and Tadir versus Mekudash. Obviously you're going to go with the Mekudash and Tadir one. So you were looking at it as being Tadir versus Mekudash. It's not really. It's Tadir and Mekudash versus Mekudash. And therefore you go with the Tadir and the Mekudash one. But what would it be if it was Tadir versus Mekudash? If it was the Chatas versus the Tamid on a regular day? That I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. Says the Gemara, Toshma, Musvei Shabbos Kolman Musvei Rosh Chodesh. If you have Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, we missed it by a day. If tomorrow was Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, so what would you do? You bring the Shabbos one first before the Rosh Chodesh one. Why? So the Gemara is assuming that the Rosh Chodesh one is more Mekudash, because the Torah calls it a Moed. Rosh Chodesh and Moed. So we're assuming that you have the Shabbos one, which is Tadir every week, the Rosh Chodesh one, which is once a month, and that's Mekudash. Tadir versus Mekudash, Tadir comes first. Says the Gemara, no, Atu Rosh Chodesh l'musafin didei ahani l'musvei Shabbos ohani. You think that when it's Rosh Chodesh, so only the Musaf is more chashuv? No, the Musvei Shabbos is also going to be more chashuv. So you have the Musvei Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. It means that this Musaf for Shabbos is a Mekudash Musaf. And it's a Tadir Musaf, because again, Shabbos is a Mekudash Musaf, because it happens to be Rosh Chodesh today, so whatever level the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh is on, this Musaf of Shabbos is on as well. Therefore, you have Mekudash and Tadir versus Tadir. We're going to go with the Mekudash and Tadir. Tashma, Musfei Rosh Chodesh, Komla Musfei Rosh Hashanah. What happens if it's Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Chodesh, which it is every year? So if it's Rosh Chodesh and Rosh Hashanah, we bring the Rosh Chodesh one first, because what? Because it's more Tadir. Says the Gemara, but Avagav Rosh Hashanah Kadisha. Rosh Hashanah is more Kaddish. So if you brought the Mekudash one first, then you would have brought the Rosh Hashanah one first. Says Gemara, Atu Rosh Hashanah l'musvei didei ahani l'musvei Rosh Chodesh lo ahani. It's a question, but it's not a question. It's a question that's an answer. It's saying, do you think that when it's Rosh Hashanah, so the regular Rosh Chodesh Musaf is not on an even higher level than a regular Rosh Chodesh Musaf? It means if a Rosh Chodesh Musaf is here, a Rosh Hashanah Musaf is here because it's got the Rosh Hashanah Kedusha of it as well, just like the Musaf Rosh Hashanah has. Therefore, it's a Mekudash and a Tadir versus a Mekudash. You're clearly going to go with the one that has two. But if it was just Tadir versus Mekudash, Chatas versus Tamid, and the Gemara says, I'm not sure which one's going to be first. Tashma, Davar Acher, Birchas Hayayin Tadira, Ubirchas Hayom Eina Tadira, V'Tadir V'Sheno Tadir Tadir Kodem. Tonight, we're going to make Kiddush. So what do you have? You have two things in Kiddush. You have Borei Piragafen after Vayichulu, and then you have Bracha to Hashem Mekadesh HaShabbos. Which one is more Tadir? Seemingly, seemingly Borei Piragafen is more Tadir. You could say Borei Piragafen every day. Well, not during the 9 days, but you make Borei Piragafen 100 times a week. You drink wine every night for dinner, some people. Mekadesh Shabbos I can only make once a week. So if I have the Tadir versus the Mekudash, clearly the Mekadesh HaShabbos is a more Mekudash bracha than the Birchas HaYayin. But now when I have Tadir of Yayin versus Mekudash of Birchas HaYom, Mekadesh HaShabbos, what do I make first? I make the Birchas HaYayin first. That's why we make the Borei Piragafen first. Clearly when you have Tadir versus Mekudash, you make the Tadir first. Says Gemara, Afagav the Birchas HaYom Kadisha. Says Gemara, Atu Shabbos, the Birchas HaYom Ahani, the Birchas HaYayin Lo Ahani. Even the Borei Piragafen you make on Shabbos is not the same Borei Piragafen you make during the week. The Borei Piragafen you make on Shabbos is a Kadosh Borei Piragafen. Therefore, again, the Borei Piragafen is Kadosh and Tadir. The Mekadesh HaShabbos is only Kadosh. And again, you're going to go with the 2 versus 1. Still don't know. Not to ruin it, but we're not going to know at the end either. Tashma, to Amar Rabbi Yochanan. To Amar Rabbi Yochanan. If you're here to know things, to know the bottom line, you have to look in the Shulchan Aruch. To Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Halacha mispal adam shal mincha ve'akal shal musafin. You have to learn halacha as well. So the halacha is, and we spoke about this a little bit, if you have mincha and musaf, and it's not so clear halacha l'maisa if that's true. We know that on Yom Kippur, again, we talk about the idea that you should really start musaf before the time for mincha comes, but there are many who say that even if you don't, you still daven musaf first, and it's only if you're at the end of the day where you can only daven one of them, then you'll daven mincha before musaf, but there's a whole discussion. Some say that you always daven mincha first. And that's why, again, most of us are makbid to try to at least start Musaf on Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, and definitely Yom Kippur before the Zman for Mincha comes. But if you don't, most people have the minhag to not daven. I've never been in a place where they've just daven Mincha. You don't want to daven in a place like that anyway if they're getting into that question. But at the end of the day, you know I've never seen a place where Mincha is daven before Musaf on Yom Kippur, even when they get it, because again, most people don't hold like this. But over here, a regular day. Mispal adam shel Mincha, v'achar kach shel Musaf. So you're davening this time at a Shabbos. You have mincha, now the time for mincha came, it's 2 o'clock, you haven't davened musaf for whatever reason. What do you do? Mincha or musaf? So Gemara says you daven mincha. Why? Because it's tadir. Even though the musaf is for Shabbos, it's more chashuv, it's more mekudash. Atu Shabbos is tfilas mason, hanli tfilas mincha lo hani. No, the mincha you daven on Shabbos, not just ato echa, but the mincha on Shabbos is a more mekudash mincha. Therefore you have a mekudash mincha and a tadir mincha versus a mekudash musaf. Obviously the one that has 2 is going to win. Tashma. Shlamim shel emesh. I just want to do a few Rashis today, and I want to do it on this piece because it's a little bit difficult. Shlamim shel emesh, chatas v'asham shel yom. So you have a shlamim of yesterday. It means that there was a shlamim that was brought to the Beis HaMikdash yesterday, and you have a chatas and asham that were brought today. Shlamim shel emesh kodmin. Seemingly you're talking about which one you're going to shecht. You're going to shecht yesterday's shlamim. So the shlamim came to the Beis HaMikdash yesterday, and now you have the shlamim from yesterday, which wasn't shechted, and the chatas and asham from today. Which one do you shecht first? The shlamim shel emesh. What does that imply? Ha'aidi ve'aidi diyom chatas v'asham kadmei v'avagav de shlamim tadirei. Which one is more tadir, a shlamim or a chatas and asham? A shlamim, because shlamim is voluntary, anybody can bring it any time. Chatas and asham are specifically for sins. One can argue people are sinning more than they're bringing voluntary korbanos, but probably not. Voluntary korbanos, the Gemara is saying the voluntary korban is tadir, chatas and asham are not as tadir. But again, the chatas and asham we know are more mekudash. So what do you have now? You have, the Gemara says, you have a shlamim shel yesterday, chatas and asham from today, you bring the shlamim shel yesterday first. However, that implies that if they're all from today, if somebody shows up today, it sounds like the only reason that we're telling you in this case to bring the shlamim first is because the shlamim came yesterday, poor shlamim, he's waiting in the Beis HaMikdash since yesterday, let's bring him first, even though, again, let's just bring him first. Ha'aidi ve'aidi diyom, but it implies that if a guy shows up today, right now, knocks on the door, and has a shlamim and a chatas or an asham, what are we going to take first? Chatam v'asham kadmei. If the shlamim wasn't here yesterday, there's not a whole story with it. We're going to take the chatas and asham first. Why? Says the Gemara, v'afagav de shlamim tadirei. Seemingly because when you have a makudish versus a tadir, now in front of us you have a shlamim, which is a tadir. You have a chatas or an asham, which is makudish. Which one do you take first? The Gemara implies you take the makudish first, which is exactly the proof that we're looking for. Says the Gemara, Amarava matzoy ke'amris. Tadir kami bayalan. matzoi lo kami ba'ilan. So the Gemara says no. It's a little bit different. The Gemara says that we're not talking about tadir. And again, this is a little bit technical. The Gemara says there's a difference between tadir and matzoi, right? You understand the proof. The proof is that the Gemara seems to imply that if you have a shlamim from today and a chatas and asham from today, you bring the chatas and asham. The only reason you're bringing the shlamim is because the shlamim came yesterday. But if you're bringing it from today, then it would have been there. Then you would bring the chatas and asham, which implies that you bring the mekudash over the tadir. So as a Gemara, it's not a good proof because you can't call a shlamim a tadir. What's a shlamim? A shlamim is a matzoi. What's the difference between a matzoi? You're asking me about a tadir versus a mekudash, and you're answering me a matzoi versus a mekudash. Everybody agrees that the mekudash is going to come before the matzoi. The mekudash here being the chatas and asham, the matzoi being the shlamim. But that wasn't our question. Our question was tadir versus mekudash. What does matzoi mean? What's matzoi versus tadir? Matzoi means found. Tadir means frequent. What's the difference? So tadir, the way that they explain is that tadir, frequent, is something that happens at regular intervals, but it has to happen at regular intervals. It's commanded. You must do this. Korban tamid, it's commanded by God to bring twice a day. That's tadir. That's something that's frequent that you must do. Matzoi is something that's prevalent. It's something that's common, but it's something that's voluntarily common. So a shlamim which is voluntary can't be tadir. It's interesting, not the way we usually think about it. But tadir, v'sheino tadir tadir kodin, the way the Gemara is explaining it now, is tadir means something that's incumbent upon you and frequent. That's going to be considered to be tadir. Something that's not incumbent upon you, something that you take upon yourself, something that's prevalent, that you just do a lot, you happen to do it a lot, that's considered to be matzoi. Tadir is on a higher level, 1 second, than matzoi. Wine on Shabbos is tadir. Why is wine on Shabbos? Is that your question?
Yeah.
Look, see, Gershon, just give me a second. I'll get there. Wine on Shabbos is tadir. Why is wine on Shabbos tadir? Well, wine during the week you could say is matzoi, but wine on Shabbos is tadir because it's required for Havdalah. It's required for Kiddush. So one can argue that certain things are tadir, certain things are matzoi. A shlamim, the Gemara is arguing, is not tadir because there's no requirement to bring a shlamim. Chatas and asham is not tadir because it's not often, but theoretically it's required. So if one did a lot of sins, one can say that for him, a chatas and asham became tadir. But again, the point is that here you have the mikudash, chatas or asham, versus a shlamim, which is not tadir, which is matzoi. The fact that you're bringing the chatas and asham first is not a chiddush. Of course I'm going to bring a mekudash over a matzah, but that wasn't our question. Our question was when you have a tadir versus a mekudash. When you have the tamid, which needs to be brought every day, versus a mekudash, which is a chatas, then which one comes first? The Gemara says, I don't know. Questions?
So the shlamim you're talking about was already shechted the day.
Not necessarily. It could be. Rashi's saying that it was shechted today. Rashi says that it's... I don't want to get too technical.
When we're talking about motzi, it was shechted today. Now you're going to decide which one you're going to go. But when it was shechted the day before, the shlamim comes first.
So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that conversation of when it was shechted. Rashi seems to be learning that in this specific thing, that it wasn't shechted. And even though you have the one from yesterday. But we're going to talk about that on the next time. That's why I sort of left it. But again, now we have matzoi versus mekudash. Mekudash definitely comes first. But unfortunately, we don't know the answer still to tadir versus mekudash, which one comes first. Okay, says the Gemara. Amalei Rafuna bar Yehuda l'Rava. Atu matzoi lav tadir. Nice try. But is matzoi not really tadir? Like, are you really going to be so technical on me and say one is prevalent and one is required and one is constant, frequent? V'hatanya oti es ha-pesach she'eno tadir v'lo oti es ha-mila shehi tadira. This whole discussion there, which we're not going to get into, but there's a discussion about bringing a chatas for failure to bring a korban pesach or to do meal. And again, as I always reiterate, you want to get the concepts down. Even if you don't get every single part of the Shach V'Tayar, there's certain things you just have to remember. So like, this is something that you have to remember, that there are only two positive commandments that you're chayav kares for. All the chayav kares are for negative commandments. The only two that you're chayav kares for are going to be for not bringing a korban pesach and for not getting a bris milah. So there's a whole discussion. We know that a chatas is for a sin that you do that's a chayav kares. The question is, do you have to bring a chatas for not doing a positive commandment that's a chayav kares? It ends up asking that we don't say that. We don't bring a chatas for not going ahead and doing a korban pesach and for not getting a milah. But the point is that there's a whole discussion there. But within this discussion, again, the key is to remember that there are only two mitzvahs that you're chayav kares for not doing. Says the Gemara, within this discussion, I'm going to remove Pesach. The korban pesach is not tadir, which I understand. The korban pesach is once a year. Of course, it's not tadir. But I'm not going to take out milah, which is tadira. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. What do you mean that the milah is tadira? Milah is not tadira. Milah is incumbent upon you if you have a child and it's a boy. You have to do it on the 8th day. But we can say that it's voluntary to have a child, even though there's a mitzvah to have a child. So that's an interesting thing. But the Gemara at this point is assuming that milah is not under the category of tadir, that according to your definition of matzoi, of being prevalent. A lot of people have babies that are boys and have milas, but one cannot say that it's tadir like you need to bring a korban tamid every single day. You have to do a mila every single day. So why does it call mila tadir according to your definition? Says the Gemara, there's another definition of tadir as well. Besides for it being frequent, and besides for it happening at regular intervals, says the Gemara, tadira b'mitzvos. Mila is considered to be tadir for another reason. How many times is it mentioned mila in the Torah? 13 times it mentions you have to do a bris mila. Fascinating. So it happens to be that mila is tadir when it comes to mitzvahs. So there's another reason why it calls it tadir. But in terms of the classic definition of tadirus that we're saying, it's not tadir. Because there's no quote-unquote obligation to do a mila every single day or at certain times. Says Gemara v'ibay seima, or you can just say that it's not really tadir mila. Again, it's matzah, it's very common, but it's not tadir. So why does they call it tadir? Mila legabe pesach ki tadir damya. Relative to Pesach, it's tadir. But relative to our definition of what tadir is, mila is not tadir. Anyway, the Gemara leaves this question that we had unresolved of tadir versus mekudash. Some of the Rishonim try to make a diuk from this last. The Rambam, I think, paskins based on this last one. But at the end of the day, you can look at that Rambam quoted above. Ibay lahu, tadir v'she'eno tadir. Okay, so now we spoke about tadir versus mekudash. Now tadir v'she'eno mekudash. What happened? So we said tadir v'she'eno tadir, tadir kodem. What happens though if you don't follow the rules? So now what do I do? V'kadir v'shacha l'she'eno tadir. So I have a tadir in front of me. Forget about even if it's tadir versus mekudash, but let's keep mekudash out of it for now. I have a tadir and a edo tadir. I have a chatas. I have a tamid and a chatas. Forget about the fact that the chatas is mekudash. I have the tamid and the chatas. Tamid is tadir. The chatas is not tadir. Again, forget about the fact that it's mekudash. I go ahead and I shech the chatas, which I shouldn't have done. So what are my options now? Well, my options are either finish the avoda with the chatas. That means take the blood, do the zrika, or stop. You did what you weren't supposed to do, but we're not going to let you finish now. We're not going to reward you for doing what you weren't supposed to do. Stop where you are, where you did the shechita, you did the Kabbalah now. As we'll see in a second, give it to your friend, who you like dearly, and give him the cup, and let him just sit there with a spoon so that the blood doesn't congeal, and tell him to just keep mixing while you take care of your other business. He'll be doing that. Now you'll go ahead, you'll shacht the tadir korban, the tamid. You'll do the Kabbalah, the halacha, the zrika. When you finish, you'll finish up the Eino Tadir. So the question becomes, if you start something illegally, basically, do you finish it? Or do you pause it as soon as we catch you and now do the legal one, the one that you should have done first, and then finish the one that you started illegally? That's the Gemara's question. So what do you think? What's the answer going to be? What's the answer going to be?
Take the first one.
Finish. Okay. Ibaylahu tadir v'she'eno tadir v'kadim v'shacha l'she'eno tadir mai. Mi amrinan kevan deshachte makriv le. You finish it up. O dilma yahiv la'acher. Go get a friend. Dimimares bedamo, who's going to stir the dam so that it won't go ahead and congeal. Adimakriv le tadir v'hadimakriv l'she'eno tadir. Until you go ahead and he brings the tadir one, and then you go bring the eno tadir one. That's the Gemara's question. Amar Funa Misura Tashma. Let's bring a proof, and we'll bring it. This is where I want to do the Rashi. Sorry, we'll bring it from that same question. This will get to what you were saying, Doctor. Shlamim shalamesh. You have the shlamim that was brought to the Beis Hamikdash yesterday and seemingly not shechted. Chatas v'asham shel yom. And now you have the chatas and asham of today, and they're both sitting in front of us. What do? Shalamesh kodem l'shel yom. You go ahead and you take care of yesterday's first. Ha diyom dumya de'emesh v'hechidami. If you have a case of yom, which is like yesterday, and what's the case? Dishkadim shachte l'shlamim chatas v'asham kadme. Let's see Rashi, because we have no idea what he's talking about. Says Rashi, to the right, 5 lines down. Ha diyom dumya de'emesh v'hechidami yon dishachtu shlamim bereisha. V'kasal kadayich. What's the case where we have shlamim shel emesh, Chatas and Asham Shalayom. So the way that I explained it before was that what did you have? You had a shlamim that came to the Beis Hamikdash yesterday. He slept overnight. Now you have him today. You have the Chatas and Asham that comes today. So what do? Since the guy slept overnight, you go ahead and you shecht the shlamim from yesterday first. That implies what? Let's see. Rashi. Kasa kadaita chachichamer. What's the case? Shlamim shevi on meyemesh. You brought your shlamim yesterday. V'shacht on hayom. You didn't shecht him yesterday. Now you shecht him today. V'chatas ve'asham shel yom omdin lishachet. Now you have a chatas and asham today. So it's the same case we had, except it's not a animal that was brought today. There was an animal that was brought yesterday. You shecht it, now you have it sitting next to your chatas and asham. You shecht the shlamim shel yesterday first. Now the chatas and asham are standing to lishachet. Shlamim shalemesh kodin lizarik. The Torah, the Gebraisa implies that what do you do now? You take that shlamim and you finish it off. But what does that imply? First of all, it implies the ibishneim omdim lishachet lo amar dekadmul shlamim. First of all, it implies that if both of them are sitting there in front of you, you don't shech the shlamim first. And the only reason here that again, when you did shecht it, so the first thing it implies that if you have the korban shlamim and the chatas in front of you, even if the shlamim was brought to the Beis HaMikdash yesterday, which again is more of a reason to bring it earlier, for sure you're going to shecht the chatas first, because at the end of the day, you're going to shecht the chatas first, because it's more mekudash, as we'll see. This is a mekudash versus mekudash. We're going to learn to tadir. So you're going to shecht the chatas first. What happened here? You had the shlamim from yesterday and the chatas from today. You were supposed to shecht the chatas first. What did you shecht? You shecht the shlamim first. And what does it say to do? It says continue with the shlamim. V'taima debo me'emesh. The Gemara's diuk is that the reason it's telling you to continue with the shlamim here is because that shlamim is not a regular shlamim. It was brought to the Beis HaMikdash yesterday. Nebuch, he had a sleepover. Yes, you still should have shechted the chatas first, which came today. But Nebuch, since you shechted the shlamim first, it's not a classic case since it was sleeping overnight. Therefore, finish it. What does that imply? That if both of them had come today and you shechted the shlamim first, we would freeze you, since it doesn't have that shlamim shalemesh, it's not a shlamim from yesterday. In the classic case that we're discussing, where they both came today, we would freeze you after shechting the shlamim, tell you to shech the chatas or asham, bring it, and then go back to the shlamim, which is the answer to our question. Says the Gemara, ha'idi v'idi de hayom, I'm back in Rashi, I'm sorry, if both of them were today, v'kadam shachtinu l'shlamim bereisha, amrinan shchitas chatas r'asham kadma l'zrika shlamim, alma mekudash v'she'enu mekudash, again, which we're going to say to Tadir. We asked by Tadir, but it's the same question. V'kadim shalti l'she'eno mekudash, yehayachad memaris b'dam v'yizrok as a mekudash, v'hu adin l'tadir v'she'eno tadir. So the Gemara again's proof is that the Gemara is telling us that the Brisa says that in this very unique case, where you are shlamim shal yesterday, which sleeps overnight, now it's sitting next to a chatas and asham. You should still shech the chatas and asham first, even though the shlamim slept overnight. That's not of a reason to shech it first. The fact that the chatas and asham is more mekudash, shech it first. If you go ahead and you shech the shlamim first, because it slept overnight, which again gives it a little bit more of a reason to continue, because it slept overnight, continue with the avoda. What does that imply? In a regular case that we're dealing with, where it doesn't have this idea of sleeping overnight, a regular case where you have two korbanos in front of us, one which is more mekudash, i.e. the chatas and asham, and sorry, one which is more mekudash and one which is less mekudash. Forget about tadir in for a second. What do you do when you have two in front of us? You go ahead and you do the chatas and asham first. You do the mekudash one first, the more mekudash one first. What happens if you shech the eno mekudash one first, the shlamim? What do? You freeze. Bring it to our case as well. If you have a tadir v'she'eno tadir, and you shech the eno tadir first, what do? You freeze. That's the proof of the Gemara from this brisa. The answer to our question is, what do you do? The question was, what do you do? The answer is, you freeze. If you start the eno tadir, you don't finish it. Clearly from this case, the only time you would finish it is in this unique case where the shlamim came yesterday, then you would finish it. But in a regular case where you have two, one that's more mekudash or one that's more tadir, if you go ahead and illegally shech the non-tadir one, you're illegally shech the not as mekudash one, then you would go ahead and you would freeze and you would do the entire thing that's tadir, the entire one that's mekudash, and then and only then take the cup back from your friend who's stirring it and put it on the mizbeach.
What makes the shlamim yesterday's? If he brought it 2 days beforehand, so now he can't bring it anymore? No,
so again, the Gemara is saying, right, but it's saying that the fact that it went to the Beis HaMikdash, the fact that you brought it to the Beis HaMikdash is giving it some type of kedusha. It's obviously not giving it, it's not giving it kedusha of shechting it, but the Gemara is assuming, again, you're right, at the end of the day, when it's shlamim versus chatas asham, you're still going to do the chatas asham first. Even if the shlamim was brought yesterday. But the fact is that, again, it's just using it as a reason that after the fact, if you happen to have done illegally shechted it, poor guy that's been sitting in the Beis HaMikdash for a day, just finish up with the avoda. Like, get him home. Get him finish whatever he's got to do. Not home, wherever he's going.
Here it brings up Ema Vir al Mitzvahs.
Where's here?
The article brings up...
you can't ask me questions in the article. We have guests over here, yeah? We told them we don't learn from the article, yeah. I don't know, what does he do with that? Okay, so let me know what he does with it. Says the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Aim Avir Nala Mitzvahs for what? That you started it. You're saying you started the tadir.
You started it. You don't set it aside.
Okay, again, I don't know. One can suggest Aim Avir Nala Mitzvahs in a perfect world where you have a mitzvah that is, but if you're doing something illegally, So we tell you, okay, you started illegally,
He
so...
didn't start it. He was just sitting there. He didn't start it.
No, we're talking about a case where you shechted the animal.
No, he shechted it.
You shechted the shlamim. We're saying in this unique case, you got to finish it. Or no, in general. So in that case, we're not mavir, but he's talking about in a regular case, which we just decided, based on this proof, we have a regular case where you shechted the eino tadir. He's saying, ein mavir al mitzvahs. How can I leave that eino tadir sitting there?
Right.
Says because the mitzvah would seem like, the mitzvah here would be to shech the tadir one. Okay, says the Gemara, we're going to reject this proof. Hold on. So the Gemara says, no, you can't learn like that. Because dilma shlamim de emesh v'chatas v'asham diyom hechi meshkachas la deshachtinu litarvayu aval lo shachtinu litarvayu tibay lecha. What was our question? You're losing track of our question, Rabbi. You're confusing us. What was our question? The question was that I have a tadir here and an eino tadir here. I have to bring the tadir one first. If I go ahead and I shech the eino tadir one first, our question was, what do you do now? That was our question. Now you have one live animal, the tadir one dead animal, the eino tadir one. What do you do? Do you go ahead and do you continue the eino tadir, or do you go ahead and you shech the tadir and then do it? And we brought a proof from here that clearly what do? You stop the process and you go ahead and you shech the tadir one. Says the Gemara, 1 second, you're misunderstanding that case. This is what you were alluding to before, Doctor. You're misunderstanding that case. That case wasn't the case you're discussing. That case was where you shechted the eino tadir one first, but then you shechted the tadir one. Now you have two shechted animals in front of you. Now the question becomes, which one to do? The obvious answer is, which one are you going to do? You're going to do the avoda for the tadir one first. But that wasn't our question. Our question was not that you have two. If you have two in front of you, you shechted the eino tadir one first illegally. Then maybe you realized, or you thought you could be able to catch yourself, nobody's going to notice, so then you shech the tadir one. Obviously, you're going to go do the avoda on the tadir one first. The question that we have, which is not discussed in that brisa, which therefore we have no answer to, is now you're standing here with one dead animal, which is already one step ahead. Because when they're both in the same level, clearly you're going to do the one that's tadir, or mekudash. But here, you have one that's one step ahead. Unfortunately, it's the one that shouldn't be one step ahead. It's the eino tadir one. So now the question is, the eino tadir one's already one step ahead. Do you finish it? Or do you go ahead and shech the tadir one and then bring it? That we don't have an answer to, because that's not the case that this was discussing. This was discussing when it said to bring the chatas and asham first, it was talking about doing the zrika first, because they're both shechted. But if it wasn't shechted yet, maybe I would say, no, finish what you're already doing, and don't go ahead and shecht it. So Gemara says we have no proof. Zak the Gemara. Tashma, davar acher. This is going to be a little bit, again, chas v'shalom, a stretch, but there's a little bit of a stretch over here. It's hard to understand. Tashma davar acher. Birchas hayayin tadira, birchas hayom eina tadira. We said before that again, and we rejected, this was again, it's a little complicated because we're discussing two things today. We're discussing tadir versus mekudash, and now we're just discussing tadir versus tadir, or mekudash versus mekudash, or mekudash versus something that's less mekudash. What happens if you mess up and do the wrong order? So now, keeping on our tadir hat, tadir versus tadir hat, and not keeping our mekudash hat in here. Birchas hayayin tadira, birchas hayom eino tadira. We said that you make, like tonight, you're going to make a guffin first before mekadesh Shabbos. But tadir v'she'eino tadir, tadir kodem. And tadir v'she'eino tadir, tadir comes first. Now what's the problem? What's the problem? When does mekadesh Shabbos come into play? Rashi talks about this. When does mekadesh Shabbos, the chiyuv of mekadesh Shabbos, come into play? When do you have to make the bracha of mekadesh Shabbos? As soon as Shabbos comes. So the way the Gemara is learning, again, it sounds like a little bit of a stretch, but the Gemara is learning that when Shabbos starts, the chiyuv of mekadesh Shabbos comes into play. And it's comparing it to the less tadir one, mekadesh Shabbos, which is clearly less tadir than a guffin, we said. It's comparing it to the less tadir one being shechted first. So you've shechted mekadesh Shabbos when Shabbos starts. Now what do? Now Kiddush comes. You have the shechted mekadesh Shabbos. You have the non-shechted tadir birchas hayayin. Which one do you do first? You do the non-shechted tadir one. You leave the mekadesh Shabbos on the side. You do the non-shechted tadir one first. Get that one over with. Then go ahead and deal with the mekadesh Shabbos. That's what the Gemara is learning. Says the Gemara, nice try. But hachanami dekevan de asyan kiman de shachte tarvayu dami. It's a nice try, but what happens? When Kiddush comes, now it's not a din of having the non-shechted birchas hayayin versus the shechted mekadesh Shabbos, the non-shechted tadir versus the shechted eino tadir. As soon as Kiddush comes and the chiyuv of Kiddush comes, now the birchas hayayin is shechted as well. So now you have two shechted things in front of you. You have the shechted birchas hayayin in front of you, because again, if you're going to compare that when Shabbos comes, then Mekadosh Shabbos becomes shechted, the chiyuv comes. Then now when time for Kiddush comes, so now the birchas hayayin is the chiyuv, that's shechted. Now you have the tadir that's shechted, birchas hayayin. You have the eino tadir, Mekadosh Shabbos, which is shechted. Which one are you going to go first? Everybody agrees when you have the tadir and eino tadir, and they're both shechted, clearly you're going to go with the tadir one. But that doesn't answer our question where you have the tadir one that's not shechted and the eino tadir which is shechted. Says the Gemara, Tashma, D'amar b'Yochanan, halacha mispal adam shel mincha v'achakach shel musafin. Again, the same question. Yidaven mincha before musaf. And what do we see? Which one's tadir? Mincha is tadir. Even though the non-tadir was already shechted. Why was the non-tadir one shechted? Because where did the chiyuv come first? Which chiyuv came first? The chiyuv for musaf or the chiyuv for mincha? Chiyuv for Musaf comes first. If you daven in the morning, as soon as you daven Shachar, there's a Chiyuv for Musaf. So the Chiyuv for Musaf comes first, the Eino Tadira one comes first. That's been shechted. Now the Chiyuv for Mincha comes, you haven't davened Musaf yet. You haven't thrown, again, it's a little bit, it sounds like a stretch, you haven't thrown the blood of the Musaf, and now the Chiyuv of Mincha comes. What do? It's a Tadir case which is not shechted versus an Eino Tadir case which is shechted. You daven Mincha first. You leave the Eino Tadir shechted one and you go ahead and you shech the Tadir, i.e. you daven the Musaf, and then you go ahead and you bring the Musaf. And you do the Mincha and then you do the Musaf. Rashi says, the Gemara says, Hachanami kevin demati zman tfilas mincha gman deshachti tavayu dami. No. It's the same thing. As soon as the Zman for Mincha comes, now Mincha's been shechted. Now you got the shechted Mincha on one side, the shechted Musaf on the other side. Obviously, you're going to go with the Tadir one first. Okay, we start at 8:30. I still have 10 minutes, 45 minutes. Okay, says the Gemara. We still haven't answered our question. Amar le Ravacha b'rei de Ravashi l'Ravina. Shachtu kodem chatzos pasol. You're not allowed to shech the korban pesach before chatzos on Erev Pesach. Mibnei shenemar mo bein harbayim. It says it has to be shechted bein harbayim, which is after chatzos. What's the problem now? Well, Bein Arbaim comes, what else do you have to shecht Bein Arbaim? The Tamid shall Bein Arbaim, the afterwards. Which one comes first? When you have the Tamid shall Bein Arbaim and the Korban Pesach, which one comes first? Tadir v'she'eno tadir tadir kodem. The Tamid shall Bein Arbaim is going to come first. Kodem l'tamid kasher. You should have shechted the Tamid first. If you shecht the Pesach first, it's kasher. V'yehei mimares b'damo at she'yizrok adam. Beautiful. So what do? You shecht the Korban Pesach first, which is eno tadir. Now what do? You have a choice. You either finish the Korban Pesach, or you shech the korban tamid. What does it say to do? It clearly says meforesh to shech the korban tamid. That's our classic case. You have the korban tamid, you have the tadir which is not shechted, you have the eino tadir which is shechted. The answer is put the eino tadir on the side and shech the tadir. Says the Gemara, good try. Hacha b'mayaskinan kigon dishkadim shachte letamid bereisha. No. What's the case here? The case is where you shechted the tamid already. So now you got the shechted tamid in front of you and the shechted korban pesach in front of you. Of course, you're going to go ahead and take care of the tamid first. But in a chanami, we don't know the answer. What would it be if you had the shechted korban pesach and the non-shechted korban tamid? What in fact you would do? Says the Gemara. Our Mishnah also, this Mishnah is, you can make a diuk to say that we're talking about where the tamid was already shechted, because it says at sheyizrok hadam. What should you do? You should mix the korban pesach until you throw the dam. V'lo ketani at sheyischod v'yizrok hadam shmami. Now it doesn't say you should mix the korban pesach until you shecht and throw the dam of the tamid, because we're dealing with a case where the tamid's already been shechted. What would the halacha be where the tamid hasn't been shechted yet? Unclear. So again, we had two very interesting discussions, but unless you see the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch, you don't know the answer. We're not sure Mekudesh versus Tadir, which is going to be first, and we're not sure if you have, obviously, Tadir Shein, Tadir Kodem. Tadir Kodem is first. If you have two shechted things in front of you, clearly you're going to throw the Tadir one first. The question is, do you go far to say that if you started the Eino Tadir one, unclear if you finish it, or if you go ahead and you do the Tadir one. Let's just do a few more minutes. Says the Mishnah. These dafim are not fair, 45 minutes. Amar Rabbi Shimon. Imra'isa shemen. Oh, sorry. I'm going to skip. Not going to skip. Uvekulan kohanim rashayin. My taima. Amar kra limashcha legedola kederach shamelachim ochlim. We said that the kohen could eat it however he wants. He could eat it grilled. He could eat it roasted. He could eat it overcooked. However he wants. Why? Because it says that you give it to him limashcha to anoint him. I.e., he should treat him like a king, and therefore he can do it however he wants. Zak the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Shimon. Imra'isa shemen shehu mischalek ba'azara ein tzarech lishomau. If you happen to be watching from a bird's eye view of the Azara, and you see them handing out shemen to the Kohanim, or you see them handing out shemen and not burning it on the Mizbeach, you can assume that it's one of two things. Either it's what? Ella, either it's Mosa Rekike Menachos Yisrael. We know that the Korban Mincha, one of the Korban Minchas that a Jew brings, is a Rekike. What's a Rekike? It's a wafer. There's a wafer Mincha, and on the top they smear a little bit of oil. So you can assume if you see oil being passed around the Azara, you can assume that either it's the leftover oil of the Korban Mincha, which goes to who? Which goes to the Kohen, or it's a log shemen shel mitzora, which we know the mitzora gets sprinkled with shemen. Where does the leftover oil go? It goes to the Kohen. So again, if you see oil being passed around the Azara, it's either the leftover oil from the wafer mincha of a Jew, of which, again, as we'll see, a little bit, a kometz is taken off, and then the oil and the rest goes to the Kohen, or it's the leftover oil from a mitzora. Says the Gemara, and let's say you're watching, so you're going to see some shemen that's, again, you're going to see some shemen that's going to be passed around, and you're going to see some shemen that's going to be thrown onto the eish, onto the fire. What can you assume? You don't have to ask somebody what it is. You can assume it's one of two things. Ela mota rekike minchas kohanim. Again, as opposed to the mincha, as opposed to the wafer mincha of a Jew, where again, you take a kometz and you burn a kometz of it, a fingerful of it, of the mincha, and then you give the rest, including the leftover oil, to the Kohen. By the Kohen's korban mincha, the entire thing is burnt on the mizbeach. So if you see oil being burnt on the mizbeach, you know that it's either from the korban mincha of a Kohen, or you know it's from the minchas Kohen Mashiach. Again, thing to remember, that the Kohen Gadol had to bring a korban mincha every single day, called the minchas chavitin, and therefore if you see oil being burnt on the mizbeach, you can assume that it's either the Kohen, regular Kohen's mincha, or it's the Kohen Gadol's mincha chavitin, because those get fully consumed. So if you see it passing around, you know it's either that definitely belongs to the Kohen, or a Kohen. It's either the leftover shemen from a Torah, or it's the leftover shemen from a Jew's minchas, korban mincha rekikin. And if you see it being burnt, you know it's either the leftover oil from the Kohen Gadol's mincha, or you know it's the leftover oil from, or you know that it's the Rekike Minchas of a regular Kohen. She'ein misnadvin shemen. Why do you know this? That it's one of these two things, or one of these four things? Because there's no such thing as a voluntary oil offering. And therefore it must be one of these things. Rabbi Tarfon Omer, no. He argues and says, misnadvin shemen. There is such a thing as a voluntary oil offering. If I want to bring an oil offering to the base of Mindash, I can bring an oil offering. So if you're not allowed to bring an oil offering, then you know when you look at a bird's eye view that it's not an oil offering. It must be one of these two or four things. But if you hold like Rabbi Tarfon that there is such a thing as an oil offering, now you don't know that it's one of these two or one of these four things. It could be anybody, any Joe Schmo who brought an oil offering to the Beis HaMikdash. Let's see a little bit of the Gemara. I just want to get to the two dots. Says the Gemara, Amar Shmuel, L'divrei Rabbi Tarfon, according to Rabbi Tarfon, Hamisnadev Shemen, somebody who goes ahead and gives Shemen. So how do you treat it? We never heard about this idea, this voluntary offering of oil. So what do you do if you bring a voluntary oil offering of oil? You treat it like a korban mincha, which again, the Kohen takes a little bit of a kometz. It's going to be a little bit more complicated when he's taking oil. He's got to put his hands in there. I think that we showed him say that you pour it out, maybe. But he takes his hand like this, like by korban mincha, he takes a kometz, or really he takes with the fingers, and then the rest goes to the Kohen, including the leftover oil. So according to Rabbi Tarfon, it says you're allowed to bring an oil offering, komso. The Kohen's going to take a little bit of a kometz, b'shayarav nechalin, and the leftover oil of this oil offering, like the leftover mincha, is going to be eaten by the Kohen. My time, but what's the reason? Amar kra, korban mincha. Because by the pasuk by mincha it says v'nefesh ki takriv korban mincha l'Hashem. The word korban is extra. It could have said v'nefesh ki takriv mincha l'Hashem. Milamish and nisnavdin shem. And the fact that it brings a korban is an extra word to tell me that not only do you have a korban mincha, you also have something called a shemen offering. And not only that, it's compared to a korban mincha. V'chi mincha, it's like a mincha. Ma mincha komsa v'sheren echal. And just like by a mincha, he takes a kometz and the rest the Kohen can eat. Af shemen komsa, so too by an oil offering. Again, this is all within Rabbi Tarfon that you could bring an oil offering. You take a kometz of it, v'shayarav nechol, and the Kohen gets the rest. Amr Rabbi Zera, afan anami tanina. Yes, there's a question?
The importance of the discussion is that if you don't know what's going on, what is the status of the leftover oil? And if in the Mishnah, there were two cases of where it's like it's actually edible to the Kohanim, and there's two cases when it's like goes onto the Mizbeach, and Rabbi Tarfon is mixing it up and saying, wait, don't just assume oil is oil.
Don't assume that the oil is white, because according to, if you can't bring an oil offering, then by definition, if there's oil being passed around the Azara, it must be one of those two things. And by definition, if oil is being burnt on the Mizbeach, it must be one of those two things. They're the only two things, or the only four things that oil is coming for. But if you're allowed to bring an oil offering, now you just open up that every single Jew can bring an oil offering, so now it could be anything.
So there's oil on the Mizbeach, and people in Yisrael can be eating it, so it gets very
complicated. Correct. Says the Gemara, Amar B'Zeira Afan Anami Tanina, I have a proof for Shmuel, that says what? Amar Rabbi Shimon. Imra'isa shemen shemischalek ba'azara. Similar to our Mishnah, if you see shemen that's going around the azara, iyatatzarech lishomau elamosa rakike menachos v'log shemen shamisora. Why she'ei misnadvin? Because you can't bring in a dava. What does that imply? Miklal demand amar misnadvin. That if it was Rabbi Tarfon, what does it imply? Mischalek. Then what would you do? You not only can you bring it, but again, imra'isa shemen shemidchalek ba'azara. This adds the word. This would, our mission just said imra'isa shemen. If you see shemen in azara, you can assume it's this or this. Now we're seeing if you see shemen being mitzchalek ba'azara, if you see shemen being split up, being given out sort of ba'azara, so what do you do? If you see it, so what does that imply? That implies that you can't assume that you can assume it's one of these things because you can't give an adava. But Rabbi Tarfon, who says you can give an adava, mischalek, so then you can go ahead and he's allowed to take, again, he's allowed to go ahead and he's allowed to take the oil. The Kohen's allowed to take the leftover oil and take it with him. Amalei Abaye, the problem is Ema Seifa, you have a contradiction. Because if Reisha implies what? That you can bring an oil offering, and what happens to the extra oil offering? Where does it go? Mitchalek, it's given out to the Kohanim. The problem is that what does the Sefer imply? The Sefer implies, Amalei Abaye, Ema Sefer, Imra'isa Shemen Shenitan Agabe Ishim, Iyatatzarech Lishol. If you see it being brought on the Mizbeach, you don't have to ask Mahu, Elamota Rekike Menachos Kohanim, Minchas Kohen Mashiach She'emis Navin Shemen, because you know what it is. It's one of those two things. Miklal de Laman Damar Misnadev, the one who says that it's Mezadev, what does that imply? Kulan Li Ishim. So the Reish and Sefer seem to contradict each other. On one end, the Reisha seems to imply that the leftover oil gets what? Gets mitchalek, gets given out between the Kohen. And the Sefer seems to imply that what happens to the leftover oil for a korban? According to the Mandamar says you could bring an oil korban. What happens to it? It gets burnt on the Mizbeach. So which one is it? Does the leftover oil get burnt on the Mizbeach or does it not? So you're thinking, what do you mean? What's the question? So the Gemara is going to answer in a second. It's not a question, according to one Mandamar, because what's the answer? The answer is that what gets passed around? The leftovers. What gets burnt on the Mizbeach? Not the entire thing, the komets. And that's perfect what we were saying. You take the komets, you burn it on the Ishim, that's what we were saying, and then the leftover gets passed around with the Kohanim. That's the easy answer. Says Gemara, L'Abaye Kashya Reisha, Rabbi Zera Kashya Seifa, Bishlama Rabbi Zera, according to Rabbi Zera, who quotes the Reisha, it says it's mischalek. He says Reisha bishirayim seifa bekomets. The Reisha which says it gets passed around is the leftovers, and the seifa is the komets again, which is perfectly fine. We're all within Rabbi Tarfon. Within Rabbi Tarfon, that you're allowed to bring oil offerings. What do? You bring the oil offering, you bring it to the Azara, you bring it to the Beis HaMikdash. The Kohen takes off a komets of it. He takes that and throws it on the Ishim. That's why when you see oil on an Ishim, according to Rabbi Tarfon, you can't assume it's one of the other things, because it could just be a regular oil from a regular person who brought an oil offering. And when you see them passing around oil, you can't assume it's from one of those two things, because it could just be the leftover oil from somebody who brought an oil offering to the temple, and it could be the leftover oil which anybody could have brought. Elala Abaye Kashya. And again, I'm going to pick up here tomorrow, but Abaye is a Kashya. I'll explain this tomorrow. Tana Reisha Atu Sefer. Abaye says that we learn the Reisha Atu Sefer. Bishlam Sefer Tani Mishum Reisha La Reisha Mishum Sefer Mitani. In Amri B'Marava Tana Reisha Mishum Sefer. Abaye gets a little bit more complicated. Again, we'll pick up here with the daf tomorrow, and then I don't know what we're going to do. We'll have to make up some daf at some point, or you'll just finish in 7.5 years and a few extra days.